Quiet on the set. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. I am Dear Myrtle, your not-so-retired friend in genealogy. Welcome to this episode of Book Club. Now, we have been discussing this book, Albion Seed by David Hackett Fischer. We're talking about 4 different migration groups from England. Yes, there have been other books written about up to, I think, 11 migration groups that came to the American continent prior to 1776 and the establishment of the United States of America. Boy, I can't say a sentence like that without thinking about the division among ranks these days. So I'm going to try not to be political and focus on what the author said. Let's see who's here. We've got Kathleen here and Bobby's here, and there's 7 of you here. Sign in, let me know you're watching. You can't wait for this chapter. So, Barbara, I would suggest you get the audio version of Albion Seed. It's available at Amazon.com. Let me bring it over here and share that. I'll get the link for you. Yeah. I think it's also in your handout. The handout is, I've updated the description of this video on YouTube, and so the handout is there. I also updated my blog post over on Substack about the Friends migration, in which I initially developed this definition. I wanted to have like a quick intro, and so in text format. And so I picked this, that the Delaware Valley itself, which is the point of arrival or settlement, was defined by the author as eastern Pennsylvania, West Jersey, North Delaware, and northeastern part of Maryland. And the push factor to leave England was definitely religious persecution, so severe that the monthly meetings, which were their, that was their church service, but it would be held usually, well, they could have them in an individual's house. Anyway, they kept special books called Books of Suffering, according to Fisher. And you'll see in a short moment that Maria just happened to talk about that very thing. Now, the homework starts out, looks like the beginning of all of our presentations in this 5-part series, because I did do that intro. I give you the link to the book itself. Kindle version, I think, Maria, are you using the Kindle version? I think, yes.
Yes.
And yeah, let me turn this note off. And then there's our schedule. And there are more than, these chapters are so meaty. We could not possibly discuss every single folkway. And this is not to tell you how to research your Quaker ancestors. This is for you to understand what their manners and customs were, their morals, their attitudes toward childbearing, etc. So it's a switching of gears as we study the social history. Funny thing, I was reading over the comments that I saved. I've taught this class like a gazillion times in different formats. In fact, initially, I had a folder inside this are overhead transparencies for about this chapter. And so that was part of my looking into how am I going to talk about it again. That's how long I've been working on this book, and I love it, and I learn new things every time. But we're just picking a few of the folkways. And so in the beginning, your homework looks the same, because I'm not sure if this is your first time visiting. Let me know if this is the first class. Yeah, there's a couple of you out there who have Quakers But yours was from the Netherlands. And they were still the early Quakers. And Barbara's saying she's already working on the audio as well as the Kindle version. And hello, Karen from Nebraska. Let's see who this is. Oh, Monique has a Pennsylvania and Delaware have traced one part back to France. And Bobby is there from Granite Bay. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thank you. That was thoughtful. Here in the U.S., we are celebrating Thanksgiving or Indigenous Person Day on Thursday. We tend more to think of Indigenous people because I live on property that was part of the Coast Salish combination of many different tribes. And I've learned a lot from them. All right. First time joining. So yeah, this is why, and she came because of the Quaker things. And I know Monique from many years of learning together. Yeah, so the reason the first few pages of our handouts are always the same is so that if you come in this doorway and participate with this, and then you are curious about the other migration groups, you can see when we talked about them. And they're all archived here and publicly available. Okay, let's scroll down here. So Maria, I've decided to go with yours first, even though I'm the point person today.
Cool.
So talk to me about your homework, because it's very apropos.
Well, I was looking I wanted to be a little bit more personal in this chapter to see if I could find an ancestor from this area. And I did have a few settle in there from Ireland, but it appeared like they were coming because they were being persecuted for different religious reasons and not because they were Quaker.
Mm-hmm.
I found John here, and as I researched him more, I found that he was quoted in or published in this book of suffering.
Those very things that I referred to as part of the push factor. Interestingly, I knew that there were Germans in this area fairly early. And there's an interesting mix of people that settled this area, the Delaware Valley area. And so your guy is John Hyatt?
Right, John Hyatt. And his name is spelled with the documents I found in a few different ways. So yeah, I'm not worried that it's spelled differently.
Spelling doesn't count. That's true.
But it was really interesting for me to go and read about how they persecuted these different people, because here John was persecuted or imprisoned because he did not believe in swearing allegiance, because they, in the scripture, Matthew 5:34, swear not all. And so there was that Quaker Act in 1662 that said, we want all the Quakers, everybody, to swear allegiance to the king, and he wouldn't. And so they would go before. And some say that he was in prison for theories that he was in prison a long time and he escaped. Some people said, like here, it just seems like he appeared. It doesn't really say if he was imprisoned or just was fined and let go. But yeah, it's interesting how this book, it makes people more 3D instead of just 2D on a pit street. Because he must have been really devout to believe that, so much so of the saying not to swear. That he was willing to be in prison.
Yeah. Anything to persecute somebody who didn't go along with the Church of State.
Right.
Yeah. Anybody who is different. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, he came over and he settled in Pennsylvania and had a slew of kids, and they actually kind of moved again more and more further south. Maybe they liked the warmer weather. Who knows? But
I don't know. That whole area I know pretty well because of my German ancestors. I knew about them way before I got into serious scholarly, if I could say I do scholarly research. I hope I do. Um, but I didn't know that I had early Welsh Quakers. And that's where Cousin Russ and I discovered our cousinship. We're back in these very early Quaker people that came from Wales. And so that was part of Great Britain or England, not on the map that was described in the book. So thank you for this and for your citations, including Wikipedia for several, a family tree profile, family search family tree profile. I appreciate that. So if you are following along in the handout link is found in the description of this video. It's a PDF, so you can open it up and make comments. All right, so you'll notice we're missing Christine today. She had to do an ER run with one of her children. We know how children are prone to accidents, etc. So we're hoping and praying that all goes well there. I haven't heard back yet, but she did happen to tell us I won't be able to be here. So I'll do her part. And she picked gender ways. And the fact that women could actually speak in church, I mean, in other of the migration groups that we've talked about, women were, punished should they dare speak out. And they were very subservient, but here women were respected as equals. In fact, in the law, you could have female heads of household as well as male heads of household. And this is from writings in Quaker meeting. You'll find them at Swarthmore College. A lot of them are digitized. Henshaw, Henshaw, has done some extensive indexing of the Quaker meeting minutes. We lost our Maria for a little moment. I hope she comes back. Otherwise, it's you and me, Hillary, but we're adaptable, right?
Yeah.
So this picture does appear in the book on page 498, where a woman is, and it's notable that she's preaching from scripture, and he capitalized the word scripture, which I think was a respectful attitude. But notice that there are men and women sitting around and listening to what she has to say. So that was not an uncommon thing, kind of amazing, but true. And then what I added that photo, but what Christine shared was this photo that is the Midlands part of England. And then of course you have the Welsh folks who tended to be the wealthy ones. The Welsh Quakers would buy like 20,000 acres directly from William Penn, and then they gradually sell off parcels. So it was a money-making venture for those Quakers. But not all Quakers were wealthy. It's welcome back, Maria. I see you coming on. You okay?
yeah,
All right. As long as you're there. It's how life goes. Got it. It's kind of odd that you'd have, and Fisher explains this in the chapter, that you would have people who kind of put off the fancy things in life, extremes in clothing styles. They're rather unembellished in their clothing styles and such. But on the other hand, they were good business people. And I wish that some of my Welsh Quaker ancestors had kind of shared some of that wealth down through these generations. Anyway, thank you to Christine for her contribution. She's really been relating to maps and female issues. And so, Hillary, you're up next because I think you have some really good comments from the book as far as what you know about Quakers.
Yeah, because I was saying how they're so much more egalitarian than either the Puritans or the Virginia ones were, because they gave equal rights to the males and the females and also, you know, children were able to contribute, certainly once they were of an age to be able to contribute, and that, and also they were pacifists. They didn't like any forms of violence, so they wouldn't be violent towards their children or their wives or whatever. They just didn't. I mean, a lot of them got persecuted even in more recent times for their pacifism. A lot of them, when they refused to fight during the last two wars, World War One, World War Two, they'd be conscientious objectors. Some of them would go and help with as medical orderlies or something like that, rather than fight, but they'd go to help. But some of them even got locked away in this country for the fact that they were Quakers. So you know, they and as you already mentioned, they had strong work ethics. They didn't want to waste any time. They just really wanted to, and they would live very plainly, simple. Didn't want any fripperies, you know, no lace collars and things like that. They wanted to. They're very plain clothing and things. And these values they still hold today. I managed to find some of the English Quakers, what they do today. I think my references were to their English, what the English Quakers follow today, and I've actually, in my one name study, I've actually got people that were Quakers in the 1800s. So they're in Britain. So you can see you can see how they kept their records and everything, and that with that. So they didn't believe in the same sort of ceremony. That marriages were different with the Quakers as well. They didn't have this same sort of ceremony. Everybody in the whole of the meeting had to agree with these for a marriage to take place, and that. So and they could have lots of witnesses. I mean, this marriage that I actually mentioned and put a reference to, there were only 3 other than the people getting married, but I believe they could have the whole meeting could be witnesses to these things. So unlike you know, with most people, most marriage certificates you'd see, they'd probably just have a couple. No, it would be the whole community would be involved with the marriage to make sure that this was correct. So, I've also put a link to the Quaker project on WikiTree because there's a lot of information there if people have got Quaker families.
Well, Monique is relating to that by saying thank you. She's going to check that out on WikiTree. And that link, folks, is here in the footnotes. Something specific about the above that, footnote 12 is about the marriage procedure. And that fact that they all signed that marriage entry in the meeting, in the monthly meeting minutes, is interesting because when you're looking for, is this my Mary so-and-so versus somebody else by the same name in this new area, who signed the marriage record things? That's the fan club. And so you will see them as they move to like maybe to Pennsylvania and then down to, there was a time period where some of the leaders got ousted and they'd move to Virginia for a while and they'd go with friends. You don't just suddenly up and leave alone. So there's some benefit to studying those. Well, of course, we want to look at the church records. because we would know what's going on. They also had a practice of, if you were moving from one area to another, you came with a letter of recommendation. And so you were received into the new monthly meeting by this letter from the old monthly meeting. Sorry, I interjected. Can't help it. Anything else before we go on to the next part? Okay, she says no. All right, so the thing is, this is a very, very short overview, just the tip of the iceberg. Oh yes, this is early Quaker records. I think I know the author to that book. Could you look it up on Amazon? Well, you can't very well give me the link. Maybe Hillary, could you look that up on Amazon? Because you can give me the link to share, because I agree that is a great resource for understanding how to do the early Quaker records research. But again, we're focusing also, I mean, there is quite a bit of it in the book. Yeah, Lisa Arnold is the author of that. She is Quaker, and she's also now LDS, or member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as affectionately referred to as Mormons. And she does weave the culture, the practices, the traditions into her story, as well as giving you very practical advice for doing the research itself. Okay, so moving on. What's beginning to emerge now? Initially, I gave you a fill-in-the-blank thing, a table, where we had the Puritans, that first group that we discussed. Then we had the Cavaliers in Virginia. Now we're to the Quakers. And yeah, I definitely could have said under dress that it was conservative. They very much in contrast with what the Virginia Cavaliers espoused to looking like. They wanted to imitate or look like royalty. Marriage for status was not a component of the Quakers' relationship. That was a loving relationship or loving arrangement, and the whole community knew about it. It's like when Mr. Mert and I were, when he was courting me, and believe me, I was shocked, especially since he lived in Virginia and I lived in Utah at the time. Our friends just loved it. They thought we were a perfect match because they knew us. And they knew him before, and they had known me for years as well. And that's what it was more like, as opposed to, okay, we're going to arrange a marriage to improve our status among the Virginia Cavaliers. And the Puritans, it was a matter of expediency. We have to have a family unit, and if you're lucky, that love will follow the marriage. And those are three distinct attitudes towards marriage, distinct and different. When it comes to child rearing, and I mentioned this in my part of the homework, and as I say, I'm the point person, so I end up talking a little more. Breaking the will of a child from the Puritans was something that George Fox who was the founder of Quakerism, believed in. But gradually that next generation of Quakers, who are the ones that came over in this migration pattern, have relaxed that somewhat. In fact, in the chapter, they believe that children, well, let me give the example from the book. A visitor to a Quaker family had noticed that a child had defiantly said, "No, I'm not going to do this," to the parent, which would have that would have caused a bit of the switch on the behind up in other up among the Puritans. But with the with the Cavaliers, they're more like working around it, trying to just bend the will but not be so forceful. But part of, and I agree with you, Maria, that they took advice from children. It's interesting, our kids have good ideas, particularly as they know the difference between right and wrong, as they're not infants anymore, and they come up with good ideas. I can say that. My kids are far brighter than I am. But so I kind of left this blank to figure you could put your own kind of wording in there. I mean, certainly there was some discipline, but not that severe discipline that we saw, for instance, with the Puritans. So one of the things about religion was a big deal. Let's talk about that, panelists. Let me pull you back up. And it's kind of interesting because spiritualism isn't necessarily believing in God. What's that difference? Anybody want to tackle that? Maybe Maria, you're shaking your head. Yes.
Well, he put it underneath the magic ways. He was talking about magic ways, and they didn't really have a, as much as say like the Puritans, but they believed in like speaking with the dead and having experiences with the dead. And one man even tried to bring people back from the dead. So it's more like seeking communication with other spirits.
I think genealogists feel that way when they go to a cemetery and that they've never been to before, and they know their ancestors buried somewhere there. And this has happened to me where I would literally say to Gordon, please stop the car. I'd like to start walking here. I open the car door, and 2 feet ahead of me is the tombstone of the ancestor I was looking for. And I always say, you cannot tell me that there wasn't some kind of communication going on, that I would stop right there. It was also a miracle that Mr. Mert stopped right there. He didn't say, well, don't you want to park in the shade or something like that? And no, we've learned we're very good at that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So
there's lots of kind of too many coincidences when you go to the family history library in Salt Lake City. You run into all kinds of just happened, turn into this person to help you with your project. It's just.
So didn't that happen to you very specifically? We're having trouble with your sound. It's just echoing, and I don't know why. But we may have to get you a headset, which will drive you nuts.
Next time I'll bring it.
Okay. So think of the example when you were at the Family Search Library, as they now call it, and somebody else just happened to be there and over here. So tell that little scenario, because it's fascinating.
Well, and that is kind of buggy, that feedback. I went down to help my mother-in-law get her mother's birth certificate translated from Russian, because they're trying to find the location of where her mother was born in Russia-controlled Poland. And when I got down there and I was asking for some Polish help, a lady walked past me. She's like, do you want to help with Poland? And she says, I can help you with that. I'm from Poland. And she says, my name is Maria. And I'm like, really? My name is Maria. And then, so she was able to help me, but also my mother-in-law's one of her best friends just also happened to be there, and is a professional genealogist. Just happened to be there in those same few minutes that we just were able to connect.
Yeah, these were not employees per se that have to be at the reference desk to answer your questions. They were just people who happened to be in the same place at the same time with exactly what you needed. It's like our ancestors are moving us as chess players on the board so that we can get the help we need. And that's the kind of spiritualism I can handle, but not devil worshiping or things along that line, not that extreme. Hillary, did you want to say something with regard to this?
Yeah. It's amazing how some things happen. last time I was out in Salt Lake, I went out with some others, and we went out to visited various places around in Utah. And one of the places that we went to, there was a cemetery there, and I said, I'll find when I get back that there's relatives of mine buried in there. And then we stopped at Heber. I'm not sure. Heber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we stopped there. That's where some of my families that were Mormon pioneers and Mormons went out, and they lived there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've actually, just by going out with other people, I went to somewhere where my all right, they weren't close relatives, but my distant relatives had actually lived.
So you can, the trees might have changed, but you know where the mountains are and what the lay of the land was like, and it later applied to your distant collateral line research. Yeah. Monique is saying, I love it when we have those amazing, miraculous experiences. If you do family history, we have them. I walked into a family history library and a book was opened that helped me break a brick wall down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like a book practically falls off the shelf, or you just pick a couple of books when you open up a big, thick book, and that's the page you need. Please don't forget to copy the title page and the copyright page so you can do a citation. Yeah. I once had that happen too, where there are times like when I was helping Mr. Mert go through his cancer treatment things. I felt very comfortable because I was going to my dad's undergrad alma mater, University of Washington. It has a medical center now. He went elsewhere for medical treatment because it wasn't there when he matriculated. But I felt stronger than I would have felt, I think. I mean, Maria and Hillary, you know how much I love Mr. Mert. And he was going through some really rough stuff. And I had to drive him to and from, and it was awful. But anyway, I felt strong because I felt like my dad was close by. That's the only way to describe it. I haven't actually had him speak to me, which is probably a good thing. But yeah. All right. There's a comment here. Okay, found the Amazon version of the book. Let me pull it up. This is the book that we had mentioned by Lisa Arnold. I'm so glad that Monique remembered that. This is on the amazon.co.uk. But that at least gives you the picture of what the book looks like. And apparently it's only available in paperback. I do have it on my Quaker research shelf. And it's interesting because you have her understanding of some of the folkways that have descended through her family from this early time period. And then she juxtaposes that with the actual mechanics of record sets and research suggestions for you. So, and it's not very expensive, but it is very valuable, I think. All right. So we speak about this thing called inner light as a Quaker. I say we, I'm not a Quaker, but, and this inner light was thought to be the enemy of the carnal spirit. So unlike some of the other groups, like the Puritans, who were very sexually active, you could be prosecuted if you enjoyed marriage benefits. That's like a loose quote from Fischer. Sexual relations were reserved only for the purposes of having children. That's a pretty strict thing. I mean, they actually you always think of the Puritans as, the Scarlet Letter and all that, but you could be branded in those among these early Quakers if you had, I think it was on the third offense, they had it all lined up as to what the consequences would be. So that was a different attitude toward marriage. Okay, so this is a direct quote that I want to give you. So the Quakers that were in England and came to America, according to Fischer, our author here, had come to believe that really small children were harmless, righteous, and innocent. And, it's like we did not give our children a hard time when they spilled their spaghetti on their spaghetti bowl on top of their head and it went all over and got on the floor because they were babies, because they were kids. Yes, thank you, Monique, for being a remote advisor here. I appreciate it. So that was that quote, the Quakers in England. So I don't know what page we're on, page 8. And they used a good thing that we do. I believed in bribing my kids. You can have this if you do that. In fact, my daughters, by the time they were teenagers, if they were on restriction, they would negotiate with me because there was the dance on Friday night at school. So I got my kitchen floor cleaned or my refrigerator cleaned out. So maybe I am Quaker after all. Okay, I mentioned the books of sufferings. But anyway, I wanted to tell you something about me and my own blinders that I have on. Now, I lived in Maryland, just outside the DC line in Montgomery County, Maryland. And we would often go up to York, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia and things. And mostly we'd see the place where my German Conrad Weiser lived, etc. In this chapter, this is actually a small outtake from page 59, where Fischer says that's an example of a stone outhouse, really overbuilt for the purpose at hand. Well, I just assume, because I've been up there so many times, and a lot of the really old, colonial era buildings were made of this beautiful sandstone that they have there. It's usually kind of yellowish into the gold, starts white, there are different variations of it. And I just figured it's because they had a lot of stone quarries and not so many trees. And I hadn't considered that they were building them for permanence, which is what the author is suggesting. And he will be next time contrasting this greatly with what the backwoods people in the migration group that we discussed next week did. They just put up quick log cabins. And so, but oddly enough, the more I thought about this last night, in my defense, I do, or to further mitigate my odd thinking, last night I added this paragraph to the homework. I have a German ancestor, Conrad Weiser, who was sent by the province of Pennsylvania to negotiate things during the French and Indian War, etc. And he had his whole history will explain why he could speak the language. But he has written that it would take 3 to 4 days to go from his home in Wilmersdorf, Pennsylvania, to where the Indian camp was. And that by the time he got there, the forest was so dense, even on this old Indian trail, that his clothing would just be in tatters. And so I completely forgot that part. So even when you're thinking about things and you're doing your first blush discussion about it, as I did up here, we need to do what J. Mark Lowe recommends, and that is take time to think about it. take time to mull and ponder, because yeah, they had plenty of trees. If the trees would just bounce back if they hadn't used that trail for a year or two, and that would render his clothing in tatters. Kind of an odd thing to be thinking about. It's a beautiful part of the country. Someday I hope that I can go back there. In fact, Cousin Russ and I planned one more trip so that we could look at the specific surviving meeting houses. Their meeting houses, once they got established, they were no longer doing their monthly meetings or their wedding ceremonies, which weren't very ceremonious. Basically, it was let's get together. They're married. Let's bring food, and let's celebrate in a friendly family manner. Anyway, that's a simple style for, I mean, actually, it's a pretty complicated looking building for an outhouse, if you ask me. But yeah, built to last. That's why it's so interesting to go there. Any other things before we go that we should have mentioned, but we didn't? Of course,
I forgot to mention that you can see that collections for sufferings on the Quaker online at Family Search. You can actually search. It doesn't pick up every, because it's a name, but you possibly could search an ancestor name to see if it's there. I try to post it in the comments, but it doesn't like it, probably because
you have to put it in the private chat, and I can then do it. Okay. It's because you're not a moderator here. You're a panelist.
Okay.
Okay, I'll pull it up. And so this is a, we'll pull it up. Oh, this is a Family Search. Make it full screen. Collection of Sufferings. And then you can search it. 2 volumes, 822 pages. So this is not available in full text search yet, but there is a search button.
Yeah, so you can, like I searched the name John, but it did not pull up my John.
Okay, John, what's the last name?
Wyatt, W-H-A-T-T. It did not pull him up. It pulled up, if I just searched the name John, it pulled up some Johns, but it didn't pull up him. So
okay, I think I spelled the name wrong. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, pulled up a lot of Johns. And then you can go to it and view that page.
Did you want to share what you're looking at, or?
Oh, darn. I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
But a happy long day. And so, yeah. So I'll go to the main page. And that would be back here. Yeah. So this is for the monthly meeting of Nottingham. I think that's what that's abbreviation. Let's see what it says here on the identifier.
I would have said that was Nottingham.
Is that Nottingham?
I would have said it was Nottingham.
Yeah.
Where else it would be.
And I appreciate your view, since you do English research, though you live in Wales. That's what really helps, having an international panelist be part of the group, because you can think of things. Distinguished in the year 1650 at the time of the Act of Toleration, which you mentioned. Thank you so much. And this was published in London, and it's been part of the collection at the Genealogical Society. So they must have this actual book, and they scanned it. Yeah. And it's out of copyright, so we can all view it. Interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. I saw it in your homework, but I forgot about it. So
I forgot too. So
yeah.
Then I remember.
I've put a link in our chat to one of the things I wanted to share, simply because it's got actually shows the insides of one of the Quaker meeting houses.
Okay, let me first of all share the link to the Family Search book, and now I'll go back to the private chat. Thank you. Well, this is from BBC News. I'll also share this link with you all publicly. Okay, where do we go?
This
Am
is
I in
all
the right?
about
Oh,
a
there
lot
we
of
are.
the
Yeah.
Quaker businesses in Britain that people will know. A lot of them were sweet manufacturers, chocolate manufacturers. If you've heard of things like Cadbury's or Fry's
Yeah.
or Roundtree,
Yeah.
they were all big chocolate manufacturers, and they were all Quakers. And Roundtree gave donated a big area in York to the community, where there's a park now called Roundtree Park, where I've been quite a few times when I've been to York. But this shows the Quaker inside of a Quaker meeting house, and that's quite an interesting thing, because it also shows how it tells you a bit more about their sort of industry. These were Quakers that were later on after the Friends migration, but the ones that stayed in the country, I mean, you're talking about the 1800s here. And there were and I mean, Cadbury's actually created a whole village for their workers, where their workers could live. There were workers actually probably were these people looked after their workers as well, much better than a lot of the
very good human relation. So another thing I get from this is, though there's one person standing and speaking, everybody else on the panel is equal except for the person that's speaking, as opposed to other churches where only the high priest or the bishop or the pastor is in a high pulpit on the side or something like that. Also, it looks to me like men and women, well, they're separated on the panel. Those look like men wearing their hats. It's really hard because I can't get a bigger version of this picture. But I have seen this picture a couple of places. In the, there's people up in the galleries, but it looks like there's no real separation of women on one side and men on the other. Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
It's quite interesting, because there's quite a bit there, and it's be interesting for people to have a look at how because obviously the Quakers started in England, and they're still going in England. There's still people that are Quakers and follow the Quaker faith, and some of my links are to a lot of what they. And there's actually some history of the Quakers actually on some of my links as well. So,
well, and thank you for that link to the Wikitree page about Quaker research. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just a reminder that next week in this same time period, we're having the wrap up with the 4th migration group. It will not be in 2 weeks following Mondays with Mert, simply because of my schedule and catching a ferry for an afternoon appointment on the 8th. So next week in this same time period, okay? And Maria's in charge of that. You'll be our point person. So I'll get to step back and relax. Well, I still have to submit homework, but I digress. Anyway, thank you to Hillary, to Christine, and to Maria for sharing today. I really appreciate your input. It's been fun to compare and contrast and to learn more. Every time, I mean, these chapters are big, and this is, I think, the biggest chapter. I learn a lot. You'd think after all these years I'd be an expert on it, but no. It's just, there's so many little interesting tidbits. All right, nothing left to say, but I'm Dear Myrtle, your not so retired friend in genealogy. On behalf of Hillary and Maria and our Christine, happy family tree climbing, everybody. That's a wrap.